Mother, man.
Hey, this is Nico Claux from Paris, and you're listening to Murder, Metal, Mayhem.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder, Metal, Mayhem! This is Pete Altieri with the Murder, Metal, Mayhem podcast, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joey Cashman, for this special bonus interview with Nico Claux. Nico is a talented and accomplished artist and author, and he runs his own business, Serial Pleasures. To say his past is wildly interesting is an understatement, but he's been willing to come on and talk with us today. So thanks for taking the time out to do this, Nico. And how are you, and how is the weather in Paris today?
The weather's all right. It's a late summer, I'd say. But I just came back from Italy, and it was even warmer than that. So, no, it's all right.
Good. You look good. Looks like we go to the same barber, Nico.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Joey, go ahead, man.
I'm a little bit behind on what I do with shit. Again, I also would like to say thank you, Nico, for being with us.
Sure.
We recently did an episode. We just did an episode featuring your story, which I thought was really awesome, and a lot of people were interested in that. And of course, your nickname, the Vampire of Paris, is very sensational to describe you. What are your thoughts on that name, and does it bother you at all to be referred to like that?
It was a name that was used by the tabloids in the 90s. So, you know, because one of the aspects of the case was the blood drinking. I'd been stealing blood bags from the hospital where I worked. So since they found blood at my place and blood bags, they used the word vampire, which is all right as long as it's not a Twilight kind of situation. You know?
There you go.
Yeah, fuck Twilight. Yeah, you're definitely more. You're much more badass than Twilight, Nico.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all right. There's a funny thing. I did a documentary like 15 years ago, and it was about this community of. They call themselves vampires with a Y. You know, vampires.
Yeah.
You pronounce it vampires. And one of them was saying that I gave vampires a bad name, which is kind of funny because...
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
you were more
like
of a real vampire than them.
Yeah, but I like the fact that I give vampires a bad name, and I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, that's funny. That's pretty fucked up. Now, I'm in the middle of reading your autobiography, The Gospel of Blood, and I find it absolutely fascinating. Many of our listeners can relate to some of those things you talk about, in my opinion. You know, when you talk about people's childhood and the bullying and some of the issues you have with lack of affection from your parents. Now, I'd like to read this quote that you ended one of your chapters with, and I'd love to have you explain it for our listeners. But here it goes. The coffin lid closed on my grandfather and my humanity. After that, I would never be normal. I became a stranger to mankind. Very well written, and I really would love to hear what you had to say about that.
Yeah, I like the word stranger. Because, of course, stranger means you're strange, and means that people find you strange, and that you're an outsider, basically. And when you don't feel that you belong, and when you have never felt that you ever belong anywhere, even in your own supposed community, like, you know, when I was 19, 18, I would go to metal shows, and even there, I did not belong. So, I kind of like I claimed the word stranger, and after that they began to call me a monster, and I claimed the name too, monster. It suits me better than vampire.
Interesting.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, so since we're speaking on the obsession with death kind of right now, can you elaborate on what that was like the first time you broke into a mausoleum and, you know, violated the dead? Like, did you have a plan in case somebody discovered you there or anything like that?
No, I was acting on an autopilot when I was doing those things. So, plus it was an escalation of some sort. First, I went there because I wanted to find a place where I would be alone. And then you would ask me why would not I go to the forest or anywhere else? But it's just that I like the place, I like the confinement and the proximity with the dead, and all those intrusive thoughts that I had about, you know, breaking into mausoleums and seeing what was inside the caskets. They came to a conclusion, and it was a progression for several years. I did it. I found out what was inside. I stole some remains. Then I escalated onto something else, and I found a job in a hospital morgue, and all those obsessions with physical death. They found their final conclusion there.
Interesting.
Now, I'm just gonna say, John Wayne Gacy, he had the whole deal where he worked in the mausoleum too, and everybody said that there was probably a lot more involved than what he ever admitted to. So I like the fact that you seem to be a lot more open and honest about the situations, where I think that he probably had some of the same thoughts and ideas that you had at that time, but he just would never admit it, be a man enough to admit it.
I think there's similarities between all those names and other names which are lesser known. This obsession with physical death, you find it in Bundy, Dahmer, Ramirez. Ramirez would spend his entire teenage years in a graveyard in El Paso. So there's always this at the beginning, this obsession with death and graveyards. And it's, I don't know why. But back in those days, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, it wasn't a cool thing to do, going to graveyards. And now I see all those videos and all those YouTube channels of people going to graveyards and doing it. And, so just, I don't know. But I don't know. It's back in those days, doing this would definitely set you apart from the others.
Right.
So
were you afraid though that you would?
it.
Were you afraid though that you would get caught? Like somebody would find you in there?
Not really, because I would make it so that it was in remote places, and I would try not to make too much noise when I was doing it. But there was a few times when I heard noise on the outside, and I decided that it was time to leave.
Yeah.
And it happened a few times, but it's a common trait with other people who have similar proclivities towards crime. It's the lack of fear.
Yeah.
Right.
And when there's no, you don't really you're not really scared of doing something, then there's no little green monster in your head that, or little police officer, I'd rather say, in your head that says, yeah, no, it's not, no, don't do that. And this just doesn't exist. It's not there to tell you that it's a bad idea.
Right.
You're just doing the thing and not thinking about consequences. And yeah, sometimes I would think about it afterwards, and I would say like, wow, I really took a risk there. But it didn't stop me from doing it again.
Right.
And I remember having read about this guy who had seen a public execution. It was a thing in the 50s in France. The public could see guillotine executions in the street. And he had seen a murderer getting guillotined. And it didn't stop him from actually committing a crime 20 years after. So I don't think that, being aware that you're taking a risk and you're risking your life or your, years in prison for doing stuff is something that really stops you when you have it inside of you.
That makes sense. Yep. Now, one thing we were talking about earlier, you mentioned it, Nico, was that we all here love heavy metal. I know you used to listen to it. I don't know if you still do. But we were talking about this when we did the episode on you. We wondered what kind of songs, because, we all listen to the extreme metal stuff. What kind of bands and songs were you listening to at that time, almost like a little playlist of what your life, back in that time when you were first going to the cemeteries and that sort of thing?
So it was the end of the 80s, though. There was Slayer, Raining Blood, and I was starting to listen to death metal, Carcass in the UK. All those bands that started to do stuff in the late 80s, Morbid Angel and all those bands. And the first Dayside, Cannibal Corpse, Mortician.
Oh, yeah.
There was a demo in the beginning of the 90s that I would listen to. And all those bands, the American death metal scene, and some of the early Swedish black metal scene.
Right.
But
yeah,
back then it was before Mayhem and Borzum and all those bands that came out in 92 or 93.
Right.
And I clearly remember this guy I knew who had a French label, and he released the first, I think it was the first LP of Dissection, the Swedish band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have it here. It was in 93 or 94, I can't remember. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's cool. I knew you probably would have liked the same stuff. We were just curious which one. So you're right. Yeah. You're right in step with all of us. We love that kind. Do you still listen to that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Nico?
very, very scarcely, because I have a hard time focusing on writing and painting when there's music around me.
Okay.
But it's a thing. I don't know. It's I know that some other people, it's the country, but for me, it's like I really need the silence around me to focus. But sometimes I listen to stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah. All right. So, we saw an interview where you were discussing your need to drink blood and how you would take bags of it home to consume regularly, which we've already brought up. But to most of our listeners, that probably sounds pretty disgusting. But you said that it gives you, or it gave you internal energy. Can you explain that a little bit? And is that something that you still contemplate today or believe in today?
It was a rush of, I don't know if it was psychological the taste or anything. But for me, it was a definitive rush, something that really gave me a I don't know, a boost of energy. And I also love the taste. And there's something like sacred with blood. So it's definitely something that sets you apart from other people when you do it.
Yeah.
Interesting. And it kind of along those same lines, Nico, with the cannibalism side of your story, when you talked about bringing the meat home from the morgue and then consuming it, of course, that's very controversial to some. And I was just curious, how did you prepare? Did you prepare it a certain way, or did you try different things? And did it live up to your expectations?
I tried a few different things, but really basic because I'm not a cook, even though I've wrote the Cannibal Cookbook. But I'm not
a Frenchman
I'm
can't cook.
Ramsay. So my wife is a better cook than me, of course. And but I tried a few things with, I don't know, with condiments and some spices and. The pieces I brought home, they were really tiny because they were cut from the ribs and the abdomen. So it wasn't like huge chunks of meat.
Right,
when people think of cannibals, they think of, roasts or, no, it was really thin slices of meat that I would, manage to cut out of the cavity. And so it wasn't huge cannibal meals, but I would often do it because I had access to it. That's as stupid as that, it was easy for me to cut strips from the cavity and bring it home. So I did it for a period of over 9 or 10 months.
Okay. And, was it like the blood, where it gave you energy or a boost like the blood did?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
It was more of a spiritual thing and an energy thing, because taste-wise, it's not for the culinary experience or anything.
Right.
People, that's the thing. People always ask, how does it taste like? I mean, who cares? That's not the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the most interesting question. The real question is, how does it make you feel like? That's the question. It's not how it tastes like. I mean, it tastes like meat.
Well, here at Murder Metal Mayhem, we like to ask questions that are a little different than usual. So you were an interesting subject to come up with questions about. Appreciate you being so candid with us, Nico. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Sure.
And speaking along that same lines we were talking about, you were saying that it doesn't really matter what the fucking taste is. That's not the point of it. So thinking about somebody like Dahmer, where he said he consumed his victims so he could, gain an essence of them within himself. Did you kind of feel like that too, where you were kind of possessing part of that person within yourself?
I don't have the same belief system, I guess. Maybe his belief system was deeply rooted in Christianity.
Right.
This is my blood, this is my flesh, and all this shit. So I believe that, people who compare that to some kind of a communion type of experience, maybe this is because they're deeply rooted in Christianity, and it didn't save him from being beaten to death. I mean, being a Christian.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So that aside, for me, it wasn't a matter of getting magical properties from the people. Right?
Yeah.
No.
Nice. All right. Well, and since we're also still speaking about cannibalism now, you have collaborated with Issei Sagawa, who was a Japanese cannibal. I think that's amazing. It's awesome. I do art myself, so it was cool to see that. But Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that? Like, how did you guys decide that you guys wanted to get together and do that, and etc.?
So back then, I was in prison, and I was writing with serial killers around the world. So that was a thing. I was writing Ramirez and Nico Claux, who died recently, and Ian Brady in the UK, and it's Ian Brady who got me Sagawa's address. So I wrote Sagawa, and he replied a few weeks later. And we started to correspond for a few years, and then about 10 years later, he was selling his art through a Japanese guy who was interested in having us doing some kind of collaboration. So I started a piece on the left side of a paper, and he finished the artwork. I sent the artwork, and he finished it. So we did this a few times, and it was really cool. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That is really cool. So
unfortunately, I don't own them anymore. I used to own a few things, but I sold them over the years. But it's probably somewhere out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that you were able to use your art in a positive way. But how has the art helped you kind of deal with your, for lack of a better term, inner demons and some of that negative energy that you might have had? Now you're able to do the amazing artwork. Your artwork is really fantastic.
I think that it's gratifying to, when you're doing a painting, it has a life of its own. And sometimes people send me photos of stuff that I've done like 20 years ago, and it's in a tattoo parlor somewhere or in the middle of the US, and they have a life of their own, the paintings, and they go from hands to hands, and sometimes they stay within the same collections for decades, and it's fascinating.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. I love that pogo you did. That's why I bought that. And we have it next to our pogo mask here in the studio. So for anybody watching on YouTube, you're able to kind of see the bottom of it, but it's above the pogo there in our studio. So,
oh yeah. Now, Nico, I can respect the fact that you did your time and you paid your debt to society for what you were convicted of. I myself have also been to prison a couple times. I'm pretty open about it on the podcast because I'm not ashamed of that. It's a part of my past. That's what helped me, become who I am now, regardless if it was a fucked up time in my life. That's just the way it was. Now, with your time, what was your experience like in prison over there as a convicted murderer, also as somebody, with a name attached to you? How'd that go over with some of the other inmates, and how'd your time go?
At first I was in a prison. The system is different in France. So there's prison where you're waiting for your trial, and you're with like people who've stolen bicycles, basically,
Yeah.
So they kind of scared when you go in the rec yard, and because of who you are. So plus there was those rumors that I had a body count, and so people were like, "Whoa, this guy, I killed like 10 people," and I was like, "Yeah, I did it."
right.
They would leave me alone. And no, basically you have to. But then I was transferred to max security, and it was less boring.
Yeah,
because prison is one day after another, and it's the same. It's just plain boring. But at least in max security, people, they have stories. They tell you stories about what they've done, etc. I was in a prison with there were 7 convicted serial killers, so they had a lot of stories to tell, and it was more entertaining, if I can use that word, than being in a prison with the general population.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, one of the parts of your story, Nico, that is a little unsettling, I think, to just most people that would have heard about it, was the murder in 1994, and that story about you. And I wanted to hear it from you. I haven't gotten to that point in the book yet, about you actually eating cookies while this man died on the floor. I mean, it's obviously pretty sensational. I wasn't sure if that was an exaggeration or did that actually happen?
Well, I think people focus on that because, it shows people that I was emotionally unattached to what was going on. So I think that people focus on that because it seems really really cold thing to do.
Right.
But I mean, I was in such a state of mind that I really didn't care what about the consequences. About as I told you, I didn't care about being caught by the police. I didn't care about the impact of what I was doing. So this is what was said during court. It's not the thing that I remember the most about what happened that day, but people seem to be focused on that. So why not?
Yeah.
But that might sound a bit cold, but murder is an ugly thing. So there was much more ugly things attached to murder than this. If you go to the physical process of murdering someone, it's ugly. Yeah.
Was it a lot different than what you thought it would be when you planned on doing that? When it was
a lot
over?
Longer.
Really?
Yeah. It's definitely a lot longer. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that he did not die quickly, so that's, I'm sure, just difficult to kind of, I don't know. I can't imagine it because I've never been in that situation, but I just found it an interesting question to ask you, since we don't normally get to talk to people that have done what you've done.
The thing is, people think of the last moments of your life as something that goes really quick, etc. But it's a struggle. You're struggling to live. And, after that, I've worked for many years in palliative care, seeing people on their last breaths, people dying on their bed. And it's always a struggle. You can't leave this world without a struggle. And it takes a while. So it's, I know that it's something that people don't want to think about, because people want to think that, dying is quick, but it is not usually. So I don't know. There's no easy way to die, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
All right. So talking on a more recent topic now, let's bring up your company, Serial Pleasures, your brand now. You got a great website. You got some really interesting merchandise. Can you tell us a little bit how you got that started and how things are going with Serial Pleasures?
It started out as some kind of joke. My wife, we were kidding about all those Ted Bundy groupies that were watching the Ted Bundy documentaries.
Yeah.
There was a few 2 or 3 years ago. There was this, those movies and documentaries on Netflix about Bundy.
Yeah.
So we came out with this name for a toy that would be called the Bundildo.
Yeah.
And I decided that it was a cool enough idea to make it happen. So I have this friend who works with special effects for movies and television. And I asked him if he could do something with the silicone, and he did. So he did something in the shape of using the shape of a leg bone. But the idea was, Bundy using this using a leg bone from one of his victims and shaping it like that.
Right.
So it became the bun dildo. It became viral, of course, when we released the photos. And I had to come up with a name for the company. So Serial Pleasures came naturally to me. And we don't really focus on those kind of toys anymore because it's more like of an anecdote, and they're kind of expensive to make, actually.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we sold a few. But now I'm more focusing on books. I publish a lot of books, true crime books, books that I write myself or that I have authors writing for me. I'm publishing, for example, the books of Issei Sagawa in English. And we published a few books on Dahmer and Bundy. It's more like personal letters that they sent to a few people and stuff like that. I released a book on the groupies of Richard Ramirez, which is called Legions of the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of a book that I've done recently. It's an encyclopedia of Russian serial killers and cannibals. So the stories are amazing. There will be 5 volumes. So far, I've written 2 volumes of the book. And
man, Russia would never want you to believe there were that many in Russia.
Exactly.
Wow.
I've counted. There's at least 150 serial killers in Russia.
Wow.
So
we don't hear about a lot of them over here. Like that information doesn't make a lot of its way to the States.
It doesn't.
What was that one you were talking about, Nico, in Siberia? We were talking before Joey came on.
Yeah, there's a guy called Popkov, which is called the Werewolf of Siberia. Popkov. Mikhail Popkov, and he's the worst. He killed 80 sex workers in Siberia.
Wow.
So he's the worst of the worst in Russia. But there's a few other names which have an extremely high body count. There's this one, the chessboard killer. You probably have heard of him.
Love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Pichushkin.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, the chessboard that he used is in a museum in Moscow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So since I'm working with this serial killer exhibition right now, and we're touring the world, I'm trying to get items from Chikatilo and Pichushkin. So that's one of my goals this year, is to put my hands on the chessboard. So I wrote to the museum, waiting for a reply. But
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely like that. Now, speaking of your website, I love it as well. And I bought the signed picture of you, and then the pogo print that you did, and then your book as well. But what is your thought on the ethics of murderabilia, selling objects like we're talking about? I think all of us are all for it, but obviously some people are in a disagreement. But what's your attitude about it? You know, you always hear people talk about, well, what about the victims and that sort of thing. But what are your thoughts on that, Nico?
We're not, to be clear, because people will always argue, we are not selling stuff that belongs to victims. First of all, they belong to the criminals themselves. And if I am well aware of what property is something that belongs to an individual. So I don't see the logic behind saying that by buying something that belongs to an individual, you are more or less doing something wrong to the victims. We're not buying stuff from the victims, we're buying stuff from the individuals who committed the crimes. And most of them, if not all, do not profit from those sales. if I go to a website online, buy something, the funds don't go to the inmates; they go to the owner of the objects.
Right. Yeah.
So, as an owner, I have a lot, for example, of Ramirez stuff or Sagawa stuff, or I have a few Bundy things. Bundy's dead. He has been dead for quite a while now. So, if you're buying me a Bundy letter, what's the logic behind saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's not good for the victims"? See what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you.
I don't see the logic there. It's a severe lack of logic. Of course, you will see that it's morally not right, and you are totally entitled to say that it's morally not right. But we live in a society where everything is morally unright, and people are basically afraid of anything, of saying anything, of believing in anything. They're just scared. So let us live our life as we want, as individuals, and if we want to collect stuff that has belonged to killers, it's our right, and nobody else has anything to say about it.
I agree with that 100%. I like that. Very good.
All right. Now I'm going to bring back up metal for a second because, our podcast is pretty based in the metal community. So just curious, were you ever involved in like a band, or did you play any instruments at all?
No, I'm not really a musical person. I don't really have a musical ear. But I did artwork for bands. I did something for Necrophagia. I did stuff for Black Funeral. It's a band from Texas. And I did a few things. I did a painting for Emperor, the Norwegian band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm contacted by bands, and of course I'm good friends with Merle Allen. We've been in talks of doing artwork for his band for quite a while now. So I've, even though I haven't done artwork for him, but I used to be friends with Jonathan Davis from Korn. And because he collects, he's a collector of memorabilia.
Right.
And I'm really good friends with the manager of Guns N' Roses, who also collects stuff.
Okay.
So,
cool.
What?
So
I know
I get.
Well, I was just gonna say I got a friend from over here in Indiana. He's in a band Between the Killings, and their music's all centered around killers and stuff. But he had told me that he had contacted you about possibly doing art for them, and that it didn't work out for whatever reason. But he said that you were just really cool guy to talk to and very professional about it. Cool. So yeah,
excellent.
That's awesome.
And of course, there's Macabre. Macabre is a I really like the entire career. So
yes,
yeah, they use a lot of the Sick Rick masks that we have here in the studio.
Yeah.
Rick has worked with them too. It's just interesting how big the metal community is and how small it is at the same time, because a lot of people know the same people. I think that's really cool. Now, I got to imagine, Nico, you get some very interesting email. I'm sure you've got a ton of questions or a ton of stories you could tell, but what are maybe one or two of the more out there requests or questions that you've been asked? People wanting you to do this.
There would be too many to mention. I don't know. It's funny because 2 weeks ago I was at the Vatican in Rome.
Oh my God! Did it collapse?
Yeah.
Did it collapse on top?
That's the funny thing, because I had remembered an email I had got that it was some random guy who said, "Yeah, I know for a fact that you're on the hit list of the Vatican, and they're looking to get you, etc." So when I was in Rome, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this experiment. I'm going to try to go to the Vatican and see what happens. But nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
So
they don't want you to
yeah,
be
I
the
didn't
Pope.
burst into flames. So,
You're not the next Pope or anything like that.
I don't know. I would have loved to require to ask for a meeting with the Pope. That would have been fun.
Oh
but,
my
maybe
God.
another time.
That would have been fucking awesome.
Oh yeah. Would have done a selfie with him.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So, you know, from your books and from the interviews you've given and everything else, I can tell, you know, you're really a person that puts in research into the serial killers and the subjects that you talk about. We tried to do the same thing with our podcast. It's pretty important to us. Now, what are a couple more obscure serial killers that interest you that maybe some of our listeners might not be aware of?
One of the cases that I've always liked is this Austrian guy called Jack Unterweger.
Yes.
And he was this guy who had spent some time in Austria. He had killed a sex worker. He had strangled her. And he spent like 15 years, and he had written a book when he was in prison. And when he got out, he got a job with, I think it was a magazine who sent him to LA. So he went to LA to cover to cover sex work in LA as a journalist. And of course, as soon as he arrived, he checked in at the Cecil Hotel.
Right.
So for those who don't know, Cecil Hotel is the hotel where Ramirez was staying, and Elisa Lam, that girl died. She was found in the what's it called? The tower on top.
Oh, the water tower. Yeah, the water tank.
Yeah, the water tank. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he checked in on Skid Row, and there was a string of murders of sex workers at the same time, and it turned out that it was him. So fascinating case.
Yeah.
I've never really seen a documentary or something about the case. Well, sometimes, there's a few things, but not really on a professional level. So I'd be curious to see something like that.
We're not the most professional, but we did do an episode about him.
We did.
So
we did that case.
We'll have to link it to you so you can check it out. Let us know if we did a good job.
Definitely, I will.
That's a good case.
It's a fascinating case for me.
I loved how the writers were all gushing over how reformed he was, and he's on talk shows and driving around that white Corvette and killing.
Because he was living the life. He was smoking cigars and I like it.
That was a good one. Yeah, for sure.
Quite a character. I also like that guy. They made a movie on him. It's called Golden Glove. It's a German case, and that guy was so ugly. He would hang out in this bar, and he would kill women who were uglier than him, and. I think he stuffed them under his sink or something, and he let them rot.
We did that case too, Joey. What was that guy's name? We did that case.
Fritz Honka.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Fritz Honka. Yes.
Yeah, we did that one too.
Honka.
Yeah, we did.
That's a cool case. I like that case.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, that's cool. We have a lot of the same interests. I think we could probably sit here for hours talking about these crazy killers that we like to talk about.
I can enlighten you with the Russian ones I've been studying for my books. They're crazy. Some of the stories are just insane.
Yeah, we did the case of the Road of Bones, that highway that they built where the slaves dug the road and they just fell where they died and they just paved right over them in Siberia. Yeah, that was
Siberia.
That was interesting.
Gulag system,
the Road of Bones, they called it. I thought that was fascinating.
Road of Bones. Yeah. They had also a cannibal island in Siberia where they sent people to die there, and they resorted to cannibalism because they had no other option.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a few crazy stories.
Yeah, definitely. So any projects you've got coming up? You mentioned some of them already, Nico, but any that you wanted to mention things you're working on that you want to pass on?
Yeah. So I'm working on this serial killer exhibition tour that's touring Europe right now, but we are seriously thinking about going to the US over the next few years. So that will be interesting. We have Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses and all the objects I found at the Armin Meiwes house in Germany, and plenty of other objects, Bundy stuff, Gacy, and many others, because we don't want to focus only on American killers. We also cover plenty of other cases around the world. So that's the focus of the exhibition. So I'm doing that. I'm also still focusing on the publishing company. I might release something with the daughter of Arthur Shawcross soon.
Oh, cool.
So that's a cool one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have other things coming soon on serialpleasures.com.
That's excellent. And we'll link to that in the episode description. So whether you're listening or watching, we'll link to that so you can get a hold of Nico's stuff, because there's just some really, really neat things on that website. I love the T-shirts. A lot of cool stuff. So I'm sure I'll be back buying more stuff from you. All right. We just got one more question for you, Nico.
Sure.
But real quick before I get to that question, I was just going to ask real quick. You said you got Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses. I mean, that is fucking iconic murderabilia right there. How did you come across that, or did you just get it from a seller?
So it's this guy from Canada, Taylor, from cultcollectibles.org, who's got a hold of plenty of objects that were in Lionel Dahmer's storage unit for 30 years. So there were two pair of glasses. One of them is in Alcatraz East, the museum in Tennessee. And the other one is in the museum I'm working with, in Rome. There was also the one urn that has some of Dahmer's ashes. So we're thinking of purchasing that. That would be extremely cool to have in the museum. Yeah, imagine having Dahmer's ashes. I mean,
wow.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe I'll smoke some of it.
No, that's cool, man. I was just curious because, yeah, like I said, that's pretty iconic. All right, so for the last question, so this is years later. The crimes you were convicted of were way in the past and everything, but we all know, like, you grew up, you had some demons in you, some darkness. It doesn't just leave. I mean, the shit's still there. Do you think the art and everything that you're doing now is being an effective outlet to maintain and be able to stay in the stupid ass society we're in? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Does that help you now?
Everything's in control.
Yeah.
Everything's in control.
Yeah.
It's I'm more like a misanthrope now. Do you say that I'm misanthrope? Misanthropy?
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like a hermit. I live in the middle of a forest, and I try to stay away from human contact as much as I can, except when I'm doing the opening and meet and greets at the serial killer exhibition. But other than that, I don't really go to clubs. I don't really, I try to stay away from situations where I would extremely be tempted to stab someone. So that's the idea.
That's probably the best advice you could give to a lot of our listeners, including myself. So I appreciate that.
Definitely, Nico. Definitely. Well, thank you very much for doing this with us. We really do appreciate it. Like Joey said,
thank you for having me.
We are huge fans of true crime and love the serial killer stuff, and so I think it's interesting to talk to others that are of the same mindset. And
thank you.
And you're always welcome here. If you've ever got something you want to talk about, new book coming out, anything like that, we'd be happy to do this again. So just let us know and reach out, and horns high from us here at Murder Metal Mayhem. So thank you very much, Nico.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Yeah.
See ya.
Mother, man.